Today is finally the day, Derek Togerson. It finally happened. After months and months of uncertainty and anticipation, we have an answer. The Padres signed their catcher, Martin Maldonado. Here we go.
Yeah, I knew that's where you were going with that. Don't get everybody excited like that, Darnay. It's not fair to people.
If
former Astro, though, you know what? He's got some postseason experience. Why the hell not?
I guess. What made me sad is I saw like less than an hour later that Jorge Alfaro signed a minor league deal with the Brewers. Now, Jorge, that would have done something for me. That would have gotten me excited, but got Martin Maldonado.
We're going to see a bunch of LFGM.
Yeah, just now. For the memories, just for the vibes, for the walk-up music. That alone would have gotten me excited, but not to be. Yes, of course, though, the uncertainty continues. That is on everybody's mind. Still waiting for an answer on Roki Sasaki, and who knows how long that wait will continue. We'll discuss that, perhaps some other Padres items as well on this edition of the On Friar podcast. Pleased to be with you, Derek Togerson. Pleased to be with you folks watching live on YouTube and listening. We certainly appreciate you and appreciate OGs, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. Thanks to OGs for all they do for On Friar and the NBC 7 sports team. They're kind enough to sent a delivery for the last edition of Football Night in San Diego on Sunday. Got some pizzas, some salads for the crew, which we always enjoy. So thank you to OG's. Great place to watch a game, no matter what your sport of choice is. If we got NFL playoffs, college football national championship coming up on Monday night, NBA, NHL, whatever it may be, OG is a great place to watch games, great food, great beer list. So shout out to OGs and all they do for the On Friar podcast. Without further ado, the walk-up music. It is the On Friar podcast. Pleased to be with you on a Thursday afternoon. He is Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp, and the baseball world is still sitting and waiting for the news that we've been waiting for months now, but could have been official for about a day and a half. But a fairly quiet Wednesday, and now Thursday. So the wait continues. How you been, Derek? What's going on, man?
Waiting for Roki, man. That's all I really care about. You know, I know signing a 38-year-old former World Series champion who had a $119 with the White Sox last year. I know that's incredibly
that doesn't get the
satiating for Padres fans. Martin Maldonado has an invite to minor league or major league camp on a minor league deal. That solves all of our problems. No, the hell it doesn't. All we care about is Roki Sasaki. That's it. Then the rest of the baseball business in the offseason can go. We're just sitting around. We're waiting. We're just waiting. Everybody in baseball is waiting. Even international signings. I mean, usually on that first day of the international period, you got like 50, 60, 70 guys announced. It's like it was very slow, and neither the Padres nor the Dodgers nor the Blue Jays signed anybody. It's these little minor things going on. We're just waiting, man. The whole baseball world's on hold, waiting for Roki Sasaki.
You took the words right out of my mouth. It does feel like this is the big domino and everything else. We got a Jesse Winker signing today, you know. Kyle Tucker and the Astros agreed on his salary for the upcoming year. But like
that'd be the Cubs now.
The Cubs, I'm sorry. And especially from the Padres standpoint, like what impact, as we've discussed, does this have on like the pitching situation? Are there moves with Cease and Arise to get some depth and get some cheap guys in here? I don't know, but it has felt a little while, right? Like Sasaki's going to come first, and then we'll have answers on everything else after. And it seems like that might apply to a bunch of other teams, not just the Padres.
Everybody has to know what's going on because seriously, what other pitchers are you going to, if the Padres get Sasaki, it makes them maybe a little more apt to trade Dylan Cease. If they don't, they have to hang on to Dylan Cease, or maybe they go into a little bit of a mini rebuild. These types of things open up. It's one domino. This is the biggest one to fall. And then is Cease available on that? What does that do for the Braves going after another pitcher? Maybe they try and hold on to somebody, or maybe they try and go out and get one of these guys who might be available. I mean, the entire league is going to go based on how this goes. If the Padres get Sasaki, Do they then trade Cease and have enough money to re-sign Jurickson Profar? If not, do we say goodbye to Profar? There's just so many different things that are hinging on this one decision. It's amazing.
Yeah, no question. And our buddy Lauren chimes in. At this stage, shouldn't the Padres have already pivoted to working on the left field and other holes, and Martin Maldonado doesn't count as fixing the catching debacle? No, he does not. And yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe they should have pivoted. I don't know the inner workings of these things. How much attention the Roki Sasaki situation demands at the moment. He reportedly, according to Dennis Lin, visited over the weekend. So I would think they were tied up with that. And then he went on to, I guess, the Dodgers on Tuesday. So you think, they could maybe deal with having a few balls in the air, so to speak. But given that we are in the week now where he has to sign literally in the next 7 days, you could understand how things would be on hold. And it's not like there's a ton of movement. Like, again, we mentioned Winker. In some of these other cases, it'd be one thing if, kind of like you said, like there was a ton of movement, guys coming off the board, you might feel like, okay, we need to kind of do something. That hasn't been the case. And so if everybody's waiting until Sasaki is settled, then that's fine. And we can kind of deal with these other questions once January 23rd or 24th rolls around.
Yeah. And also don't confuse nothing having actually happened with things not being worked on. The legwork for this stuff has probably been laid all the way going back to the winter meetings. So stuff has been worked on. They have, as you said, Lauren, pivoted to do other things. They just haven't consummated it yet because they have to figure out which of their different machinations they've been working on is going to make the most sense based on what happens with Sasaki.
Yeah. I'm going to show you something. This is interesting. Just popped up on Twitter, and I think you'll see why I want to show it instead of trying to.
Is that what it's still called?
Read it, or well, that's what I call it. Make sense of it. This appears to be well,
that makes all the sense in the world. Yeah.
A publication in Tokyo. Let's hit this little translate button here. It has been reported in today's Tokyo edition. Looks like a newspaper of some sort. I can't make sense of this between the Union Tribune and the National Enquirer that you see in the grocery store. But that Roki Sasaki is aiming to transfer to the majors via the posting system, will decide on his transfer destination on the 16th, which would be the 17th Japan time. So if this is a reputable source, that would suggest that news could be coming today or at some point in the next 24 hours.
Alexa, what time is it right now in Japan?
It's tomorrow in Japan, right? It's probably well into tomorrow.
Current time in Japan. 8:20 a.m. tomorrow.
Hey, things should be, we're almost in, business hours.
So, okay, if that is accurate, then yes. Now we also do remember Dan Patrick was telling us that SDSU would be joining the Pac-12 within the end of the week, and that was two years ago. So sometimes people get tips that aren't entirely accurate. Although yes. I wouldn't say this is completely off base. It could very well happen while we're doing this podcast. It could very well happen tonight while we're warming up our dinner. You never know.
I would love that. I would love it if it happened now while we're on, or at 6 o'clock right before the sportscast. That'd be great. That'd be a lot of fun. And I think we're all looking for some sort of resolution. What is interesting is he's probably stateside, right? I would imagine with his agent in Los Angeles, being that he was apparently with the Dodgers on Tuesday. So I think this is all going down here. Maybe there's a press conference shortly to follow. Now, obviously, if there's a publication in Tokyo, they're going to be kind of framing it for their audience. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting.
I don't know, man. Everybody's
not sure what to do with it.
He's going to the Dodgers. Half the people say he's going to the Padres. 3 people say he's going to the Blue Jays, and they all work for the Blue Jays.
Well, and maybe it'll be like maybe the Blue Jays will be the Angels of this cycle, like they were with Ohtani, the team that everybody's a bit surprised to hear of, and they end up snatching him up.
So I'm not surprised at that so much because small media market, like he has talked about, it's all Maple Leafs. So nobody, hey, the Blue Jays are here. Cool. And they're kind of fun. Also, they have a really long history of good pitcher development. So I totally understand why he might want to go there. Plus, you have to be serious about that because nobody goes to Toronto in early January on purpose. Unless you're really, really considering going there to make your professional career happen. So they are more of a player here than I think people realize.
Yeah. And yesterday was completely quiet for the most part. The one thing that leaked, and it was something that we've discussed and figured we hear about at some point, Mark Feinsand reporting that the Padres and Dodgers had hit some teams up in search of gaining some international bonus pool money for 2025. Since the Padres can get up to 10 and change million, Dodgers 8.2 million. Yeah, how much that weighs into the decision, I don't know, but it'll be interesting if we hear of these types of deals and if they end up being a precursor if something follows shortly thereafter.
Yeah, but I hear that. I hear the guys, people on the radio talking about this, and it can't be that big of a factor because yes, can you get up? The Padres are 6.2 million. You can add 60% of that, which is another to get up to 10, right? To do that, you have to make 16 different trades because you can only do it in $250,000 increments. You have to make 16 trades. Please. No one's making 16 damn trades.
AJ Preller's not making 16
grand a piece. Think of how this works legitimately. Like, what are the logistics of this? Logically, the Dodgers are not making 14 trades for 250 grand each. It's not. Can they do 5 or 6? I could maybe on the outskirts see that happen. You have to make a trade. The Padres would have to make a trade with literally more than half the teams in the league to make this thing happen. And by the way, all those teams, they're still trying to sign their guys too. So this whole, we're trying to get to 10 million. No, stop. It's not happening.
Yeah. I mean, I could see AJ Preller making a bunch of trades in the middle of the night. If anybody's going to do it, it'd probably be AJ Preller.
He gets through 4 or 5. The rest of the league goes, okay, AJ, hold it. No, put the phone down. We see what you're doing. No.
My thing too is like, are these teams really going to help the Dodgers spend more money? Like if these teams, and who knows what they'd be getting in return, maybe it'd be worthwhile for them. But I'm like, can we just not help the Dodgers spend any more money? Like they don't need anybody's assistance with that. Can we have one situation?
They're not spending their money at that point. They're giving up their 39th ranked prospect for 250 grand. It's not their money anyway. What do they care?
Yeah. It's just, man, can we have one situation where they're at just a slight disadvantage? But you're right. Like, how much does a couple million mean in this case? Like, all of us would take a couple million in a situation like that. But I would guess from Roki's standpoint, that's probably not like top of the priority list. It's fit, it's development, it's team, it's market, city, location, teammates, all these other things. And the money's going to work itself out. I think short term and long term, whether it be through endorsements and then what's, coming down the road, if he pitches the way people expect him to.
Well, there were a bunch of teams with a heck of a lot more money in the international pool. I mean, the team's up at like 7.8 million. The 3 teams he chose, the Dodgers, the lowest number with the Giants at 5.1, and the Padres and Blue Jays are both there at 6.2. They're all 3 of them in the lower third of the league and how much money they can offer on the bonus pool. So obviously that the money, what he gets up front, is not a massive factor for this guy.
Yeah, I would think not. I would think not. There are also, I don't know if you saw the clips of what appeared to be Roki working out at Petco Park that got Padres fans all excited from Monday, which made me think like we also don't know that isn't just kind of like a standard part of some of these visits.
Like, of course it is.
Dodger Stadium.
What was he doing? I haven't seen the video.
There's no like a bullpen, doing some jogging, that sort of thing.
Well, let me guess, he's wearing Padres gear.
And of course he's wearing Padres gear.
Yeah, exactly. So when he did the same thing at Dodger Stadium, he's wearing Dodger gear. When he did the same thing in Toronto at Rogers Center, he's wearing Blue Jay gear. He's not traveling around with his own stuff, right? They're more than happy to hand him over some of their clothing to put him in, see if he likes the look and the fit. right? That happened at every one of those places. That don't read into that, people.
The difference is what Rogers Center or whatever it is domed, and I don't think there's any high rises right next to Dodger Stadium and all the scenic shots I've never seen.
You can't see into that place, right? This is the only one where it's a downtown stadium where people can actually see what's happening.
Get our guy Greg Bledsoe to hang out in the patio and see if he spots anybody. So that felt to me like much ado about nothing. I get people getting excited about it, but at the same time, we also don't necessarily know how these visits go and what all entails and that sort of thing. And so it probably shouldn't be much of a surprise from that standpoint.
Should we hand it over to Warzone Gaming?
No, I don't think so. We can hand it over to Gustavo though. Darnay, Derek, hold me. I can't take it anymore. We're with you, Gustavo.
Group hug.
We are with you. Group hug. We're all together. It's gonna be okay. One way or another, we're gonna make it through this. I'll just say, if not Padres, Blue Jays, please. If not Padres, Blue Jays.
That's the thing. Let me ask you this: if he signs with the Blue Jays, how much better will we all feel than if he signs with the Dodgers? Give me a percentage.
Blue Jays over. I mean,
if it's not the Padres, and if it is the Blue Jays and not the Dodgers, how much better will we feel about ourselves?
Blue Jays over the Dodgers, I would think you're feeling like 80% better.
See, I'd go 260% better.
I mean, you're probably right. There's obviously still the part of you that's disappointed, but between the two, one, because I mean, at the end of at that point, you're just not thinking about Roki Sasaki. Obviously, when the Padres play the Jays, you'll say, "Oh, is Roki going to pitch?" That sort of thing. Maybe there will be some questions if he visits about "Hey, what'd you consider with the Padres? How close were you?" That sort of thing. But at that point, he's just another major league pitcher. I mean, how much have we talked about? Weren't they after Seiya Suzuki? When he was coming over, there's been other guys that they've been in the mix for that have gone to teams that we talk about the Dodgers, we talk about the NLS teams, and then obviously there's other teams as things happen, they come up, but nothing consequential has happened with Seiya Suzuki as it relates to the Padres. And so he just becomes another guy, and you'd much rather take just another guy than a potential generational pitcher that is throwing for your rival that you might have to deal with for the next 20 years.
Well, because it's a compound event. It's like division games in the NFL, right? If the Chargers lose to the Chiefs, it's not just a loss. It's also you're falling behind another game because it's a division opponent. You only get two of those a year. So it's like not only the Padres miss out on this talent, but then the Dodgers get it. So it's like not only do you take the hit of not having him, but it compounds. You fall behind twice as much because the Dodgers now have it. That's what makes it hurt so much. Is not only are you not getting what you were trying to get, but your biggest rival now has it to lord over you for another 6 years plus. That's what makes it so much worse if they do end up getting him. Is that not only do we not have him, but they do.
And there was a Dodgers fan whose comment, started circulating I'm going to crash out if they don't get Roki Sasaki. Why do you care if you don't get Roki Sasaki? You already got Blake Snell. You have Shohei. You just won a World Series, and he wasn't even pitching for you guys yet. That's going to happen. You've got a World Series roster. You just won a World Series. You can pay for whoever you want. So what if you miss out on Roki Sasaki? And I think there's also the conversation of the good for baseball thing that last year when Shohei Ohtani signed with the Dodgers, it seemed like you had all these baseball people, national baseball people, oh, this is so good for baseball to have Shohei Ohtani with one of the premier franchises. Whatever. I think we've reached a point though, when you have Freeman, when you have Betts, when you have Ohtani, when you have Snell, when you have all these guys, you just won a World Series. you get to a point where maybe it's bad for baseball. And I feel like you've started to hear some people actually kind of say that. Like, I really hope it ends up being the Padres because you've got a fun rivalry and it enhances that rivalry rather than getting the deck stacked in favor of one team who already has more than they need.
Yeah, but you can't hold it against them because it's baseball's own stupid rules that the Dodgers are exploiting. So is it bad for the game to have one super team like this? Yeah, because there's no parity. And parity is good for sports because it gets more fan bases involved. It gets more people to look at the game and want to be engaged with it. I love watching greatness, and the Dodgers are unabashedly a great franchise and a great team. But you're going to run into what we saw in the NFL with the Patriots. They were great, but we got Patriot fatigue, which I think if the Chiefs win another one this year, we're probably going to start hitting that realm where it's like, God, can we get somebody else in here, please? So while you look at it and go, oh my God, they're amazing to watch, and you respect and look at what they do and wonder why nobody else can replicate it, you also go, well, nobody else has a chance, so we're all just kind of get really bored and stop paying attention. So where's that line here? I think if the Dodgers get Sasaki, we're probably nestling up right against it, where it's like, yeah, it's probably bad for the game, but the game did it to itself because it put these rules in place, and they didn't realize that a team like the Dodgers would be able to find all the loopholes and exploit them all at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, it makes it a whole lot less interesting. Like, when every year in the NBA, it ended up being Steph against LeBron in the finals, and going into the season, you knew it was going to be Steph against LeBron in the finals. It just wasn't all that exciting, but I will say I really enjoyed watching those finals.
But you had to wait 6 months to get to that point. You got to slog through the regular season and a bunch of playoff series that don't really matter. Like, if those two teams played a 49 game series, that would be awesome. Just let them go. Let them do their own thing.
Let them play 83 games.
Everybody else can play for the secondary cup, right? But when you have to go through all this other crap to get to the inevitable, it's annoying.
Well, and then at least in that case, you had two teams with, all-time great talents going against one another. There's not a second team in this case. If the Dodgers do all this and don't win a World Series, it's going to be viewed, and probably rightly so, as a massive failure. Unless every single team, unless Betts is out for the season, Freeman's out for the season, Snell,
TJ doesn't take, right?
Yeah, all that stuff. Like, unless it goes terribly, terribly wrong. But if these guys are relatively healthy and you don't win a World Series, now you're at the point where, like, well, who should reasonably beat this team? Now, the beauty of baseball's postseason is a guy gets hot, you got a pitching staff that's rolling, things can happen. And the Padres were awfully close. But now I'm not so sure how the Padres are going to look compared to last year's version. And, they have a chance to get an exciting talent, not just for this year and going forward. And that's the big part of why this Sasaki thing is so huge, because it's like this team needs affordable talent for the future. And I do think we get so caught up in 2025, and it is a worthwhile discussion that hopefully we'll have a chance to have about what he would really mean for their rotation in 2025. And I've been very much in the camp of, like, you probably need to deal Dylan Cease. I could also understand you keeping him just to be like, all right, we're probably not going to get anything for him. We're probably not going to be able to keep him, but we're much better with Dylan Cease and without Dylan Cease. And so we're just going to let it ride for 2025. I believe that more so with Dylan Cease than probably Luis Arraez. But it's an interesting conversation. Like, what will he reasonably be able to give you, given his age, given that he didn't throw a ton of innings last year? There have been some injury stuff, and he's a guy that you're probably going to want to, like, ease in, just like what was Paul Skeens, 130 innings last year. Like, does he reach 130 this year? I don't know.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because he's throwing 110 is his max. Then he's gotten to 90 something last year. You can get him up to 135, 140 this year without problem.
But probably not like a full starter's load, 180 to 200, somewhere in that.
Oh no, he's not going to do what Michael King did. Get up to 170 That's not safe for him. Also, King, remembers his late 20s. He's got a year of 100, throwing 160 innings under his belt. Like he's been doing this for a lot longer a period of time. His body is more developed than Roki Sasaki's is. Roki's still growing into himself, which is kind of amazing to think about. So yeah, you're going to have to manage him a lot like the Pirates did Paul Skeens, even going back to when the Nationals had Steven Strasburg, holding him back. But it probably wouldn't be, well, I guarantee when we were shutting him down at the end of the year, it would be, hey, he's gonna skip a start here. He's got a little tweak, a little fingernail thing. He's going on the 10-day. We're gonna let him just rest over here for a little bit, and then give a couple other guys a couple spot starts. That's how they would do it, is stretch him out that way.
Yeah, and it's then interesting to consider, what does the rotation look like in both cases, with and without Cease, and there are bodies there. It's just there's a lot of guys that we don't know that they can rely on for 130 to 180 innings. Like Matt Waldron ran out of steam. Randy Vasquez was good in stretches. Like, does Johnny Brito take a leap? Do they bring in somebody like a Martin Perez or a Michael Wacha in the past to kind of round things out? Like a guy that's veteran that you kind of have an idea of what you're going to get. Maybe with some work with Ruben Yebla, you can kind of unlock something. But we did also just see the Dodgers go through a season where, like, what did they have, in terms of the rotation? Once the postseason rolled around, they had the guys they needed, and then the bullpen came together, and they were lights out. And so they kind of just did like a patchwork thing, and there's a chance the Padres might have to kind of take that same type of approach, even if they do have Dylan Cease, because again, you just don't know what you have beyond that, like 3 or 4.
That's what you got to get to the postseason to have that happen. And do the Padres have a much better chance of getting to the postseason with Dylan Cease? Yes. Does he, as we saw, matter all that much when they're in the postseason? Maybe not. He wasn't great in that division series against the Dodgers by any stretch of the imagination. Now, is that your classic small sample size? Again, absolutely. What can they replace him with that's going to give you the ability? Because he won 14 games on his own. The Padres won 19 times in his starts, something along those lines. Who's going to be able to match that and give you 19 wins that you can get for something that's substantially cheaper? And by the way, also just give you the innings that he eats and the pure stuff and excitement that he brings. You can't replicate that. You can probably do something that's close enough to get you to the postseason. Then you've got a guy like Darvish, King, who are both proven postseason performers at this point, and see if you can find a third guy or bullpen your way through like the Dodgers did. That without Dylan Cease or Roki Sasaki, that's going to be your best bet. I'm not so worried about the postseason in that situation as much as I am getting to it without a guy like Cease.
No, 100%. Because yeah, like you said, the rotation tightens up once you get to that point, but you got to get through 162 games, and like, they might have guys. It was just, again, like not knowing what Waldron is capable of, not knowing what Randy Vasquez is capable of, not necessarily knowing what Johnny Brito's role is going to be, and if they stretch him out, like what he'll be able to give you. Like there's a scenario in which like they have the guys to get through, but there's also a situation where like, the league kind of figures out Matt Waldron. He's not a full-time starter. Maybe Randy Vasquez and Brito don't develop the way that you want them to. There's enough uncertainty to make you a little bit nervous. I feel like there's a lot about this team that makes you nervous right now.
Which is why if you do trade Dylan Cease, you better get an arm back, like a proven, reliable arm. That's the only way you can possibly do that.
And I was wondering that the other day, and just curious, like, what does a Dylan Cease trade look like? Not even like specifically with players and teams, but in terms of like the profile of the return. Because I think a 2-for-1, like I think you've got to get multiple players back, unless you just
of course, unless you're getting a guy who's a stud, like something on the equivalent of Cease.
Right. So is it a proven starter? Like, because are you going to be able to get like your starting left fielder and a guy in the rotation for Dylan Cease? I don't know. is it like a young guy who is on the precipice of arriving that might be ready by July or August, but you feel really good about what he can do, and a guy that you can slot in the rotation, or a guy that you can say, there's our starter at left field. There's a first baseman with some pop. You know what I mean?
I think you can look at the Corbin Burns trade as some sort of guidance here when he went to the Orioles, because he's a guy who, again, now he had probably a little bit more of a track record with the Cy Young Award in there, but he was going to the final year of his contract. And what they got was Joey Ortiz, the shortstop, and left-handed pitcher DL Hall, plus a competitive balance round A draft pick. It's pretty good. Now, what we do know is the Orioles, if they say it is Baltimore, who's also looking for an ace, maybe they're going to line up. They have a glutton of a lot of outfield prospects, Heston Kjerstad, somebody like that. Even Colton Cowser's name, I've heard that thing rolled around. And then maybe one of their arms who was right on the brink of being able to make it out of the AAA ranks and into the major league. You're looking at something like that if you're looking at a Dylan Cease trade, and then maybe a pick as well.
Yeah.
Or $250,000 in bonus money. You can always do that too.
just that. And the benefit of the trade is shedding his 14 million or whatever it is in salary. I mean, it's sad that, we're at this state, but I've just kind of come around to this place where you just got to deal. The combination of Dylan Cease and Luis Arraez, that's close to 28 million. Soto made 33, 32, whatever in his, last arbitration year. Like it's close. It's a similar number. Not comparing the talent levels, but in terms of similar number that you have to shed one player instead of two. How many are you able to get back? This team just has too many needs. They got to get younger. They got to get cheaper. They got to get more controllable. And it now, in hindsight, feels like a missed opportunity with Blake Snell, with Josh Hader in 2023, when you decided to ride it out and, you didn't get anything back in return. You didn't turn around your season. And, you might have been able to get something that could be helping you now going forward.
Yeah, but that's the trade deadline in a season that already looks like it's on the brink is a very different situation than the off season when you're going into something where you think you got a lot of talent and things went really well the previous year. If you've got a 90 game sample size, seeing this isn't working, it's a very different situation than right now where it's like, hey, hope springs eternal, man. We never know. Jackson Merrill might take a step. We all expect him to take a step forward. We didn't know what we had with him the previous year. Maybe Jake Cronenworth bounces back. Maybe Xander Bogaerts becomes 2018 version of Xander Bogaerts. You got a lot of things that are working for you right now. Whereas if we're all asking these questions at the All-Star break, we know, okay, things aren't working. Send some guys out of town. Don't do what you did with Snell and Hader the previous year.
Yeah. I hate Nick Casillas because he gave me a jump scare by saying Roki just signed with the Dodgers right now. And of course, like a dummy, I had to go to Twitter just to make sure that wasn't true.
Give me your source, Nick.
Big Daddy Trip 619. He wants to go to LA. He doesn't want to play in SD. SD is cursed. It might feel that way.
Give me your source, Big Daddy Trip 619.
Gustavo, the group hug did help with Gustavo. So
you're welcome.
It did make him feel better. Josh asking, does him throwing to Ethan salad and wearing brown and gold mean anything? I don't think him throwing to Ethan salad probably meant anything, sadly.
No, I think that Ethan is the guy who was here and he's the catcher of the future. So that is the reason that they had him doing that work. Maybe it's hey, this is the guy you're going to be working with, man. He's going to be up in 26, start getting to know him, see how you like throwing to him. So maybe that does mean something. Maybe it is if Saul. Okay, how about this? If Salas, who 2 years ago was the number one player on the international market, generational talent, signed, and 2 years later, he's the guy who was one of the determining factors bringing in Roki Sasaki, the number one player on the international market. And in between, by the way, you signed number one on the market, Leodalis DeVries. How great is AJ and Chris Kemp doing on the international market right now? Like if that move from 2 years ago pays off today, that would be incredible. That would just be incredible. And if Roki likes throwing to the kid, maybe he says, man, this guy is going to be with me for the whole time I'm in San Diego. Sign me up for that, dude. That would be awesome. I know also, by the way, give Ethan Salas a long-term contract right freaking now if that's the case.
Yeah, Roki's like, this guy's got good hands. I mean, he's slick, Look at the
quiet
framing.
back there. Look at that. I like this kid. He's a left-handed hitter. Oh my God. He's awesome.
Also, does it mean anything that the Padres apparently signed a couple young guys today? Probably not.
How much they signed him for?
Our friends from Mad Friar said, whatever you think whatever you've decided this tells you about the Roki Sasaki situation, no, I don't know how much they signed.
Yeah, they signed a couple guys from Mexico, right? A couple of Diables Rojos.
Yeah.
If those are under, if they're $10,000 and under, they don't have to count against.
Oh, that's right. Wasn't that the rule that changed a couple years ago? You can just sign a bunch of guys for 10K or whatever it is.
Correct. So you can sign as many guys. You can sign 300,000 guys for 10,000 a piece if you want to, and it does not count against your.
Then trade them for $250,000.
Yeah, exactly. And then sign. That's probably what the Dodgers are doing. They are signing guys for $9,999 and trading them for $250,000 in bonus pool money. Those bastards.
They're deferring all the money, and yeah. Do you think they're going to go to arbitration with Michael King?
I don't think so. That strikes me as weird. If you're that close, and one side doesn't just go, okay, fine. It typically means they're working on a long-term deal. So that's what I think is in the works for Michael King. I think that's what we've talked about from the very beginning, is he would be the most likely candidate to do a long-term deal. And I think probably they just let the deadline lapse, and then by rule had to turn in their numbers, yada, 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 whatever. So I don't think it's going to go. I'm probably 40% sure it's not going to go to arbitration. They are, in fact, going to sign some kind of a long-term contract, even if it is just 4 years and an opt-out after 2, just to, spread that money out over the competitive balance tax. But I would actually I'm fairly confident that it's not going to go to arbitration, because that's just not what AJ does. And those are the two guys the two sides we've all identified this whole time as they're going to find a way to work out a longer term deal.
Boy, I hope you're right. I'm glad you put a positive spin on it, because I mean, everything now has me worried. I'm just in this place.
I can see that too. Yeah.
Everything has me a little bit concerned. Again, this never happens with AJ Preller and the Padres. Michael King's so important. You speak of Corbin Burns, it almost makes me think of the Corbin Burns situation with the Brewers, when he seemed to kind of realize, like, my future is not here, when they didn't just kind of pay him and avoid that whole scenario. And, having this settled by an arbiter, would not, I think, bode well for their relationship going forward, especially when, again, if Michael King's agent is worth his salt, he's seeing the money that's thrown around and knows what could be coming towards his client in a year if he, replicates what he did in 2024. There's always the opposite concern that you have a down year, there's injury or something like that, and you miss out on a payday. But right. I want to avoid any sort of saltiness between the two sides, because Michael King just seems like a perfect fit here, part of a really important trade. I think having him long term, like, the messaging is good from that standpoint, and would hate to see things go sour.
Get creative with the way you structure the contract. Front load the heck out of it. Make it a 5-year deal worth. Make it a 4-year deal worth $40 million. Okay, so that's $10 million per on the competitive balance tax. But the first 2 years are 18-18, and the last 2 years are 1-1. And he has an opt-out after year 2.
Yes, there you go. There you go.
That would, why not?
Yeah. That's true. I mean, that's a good way of looking at it. It gives you a palatable CBT number, and then he can get paid, a couple more years. I like that.
Yeah,
like
and that will, by the way, 18, that will be 36 and then 38, and there's a $2 million buyout. Bam, done. Sign it now.
So who knows? I mean, hopefully you're right, and this obviously can get settled between now. I think the hearings start like the 27th or something like that. We've got a little time, if not in February, for the two sides. And I don't know. I can't remember just in the 6 years I've been around it, even getting to this point, you've got more history than I do of them presenting their numbers and then obviously getting it sorted out beforehand. I'm sure that's happened.
Not in AJ Preller's tenure. It's never happened this way. The last one happened the year before he took over, and it was with Andrew Kashner. And if I recall correctly, it was like 150 grand that the two sides were apart. And Kashner's take was basically, they don't bend for me. Why would I bend for them? That's how the organization used to run itself before, again, Peter and the new ownership group really took over and sort of changing the culture and the way they do things here.
Yeah. Christopher saying the ownership kerfuffle is throwing a wrench in everything. How much of an impact do you think that's actually having on any of this, from Sasaki to their ability to sign players, any of that?
I usually like to put my name on stuff, and I'm not reticent to say how I think things are going. In this situation, I have absolutely no idea, because it comes down to a comfortability factor. I do know that I don't think that it is dramatically impacting the Sasaki thing, because the finances don't impact him anyway, right? This is all set for the first 3 years. He set on what he can make, so it doesn't matter, and things will be hopefully fully resolved after 3 stinking years. So I don't think he cares about that so much. He cares about who his manager is. He cares about who his GM is. He cares about who his teammates are. That's how they can develop him to be the best version of himself, which is why I think the PLNU pitching lab, hopefully they took him over there, and you got to get a chance to see that thing, and that can maybe sway him this way a little bit. I don't think that has anything to do with the Sasaki stuff. It probably has something to do with what else is happening with, why is Jurickson Profar still out there? Why do we have to feel like we have to trade Luis Ariz or Dylan Cease? Why do we, bump right up against that competitive balance tax of that going $1.5 million over? That's where the other moves are, where I think it's probably having something resembling an influence. But again, I could not begin to tell you how much of that is actually happening or how deep that runs, because this is a family squabble at the very top of a $2 billion entity. And those are always messy. And maybe everyone's saying, don't do a thing until we figure this out, instead of saying, here are some parameters you can work out while we figure this out. I don't know what's happening with this behind the scenes, because now the lawyers are involved and nobody's saying a thing anymore.
Yeah. And how far down the road is Roki Sasaki thinking? If it's, 3 or 6 years down the road, where he's thinking about his potential payday, a long-term extension, the ability of the team to sign other star players and field a World Series caliber roster, maybe that gets some consideration. Obviously, there's stability there with the Dodgers that you're not going to have, other than maybe like the Yankees, darn near anywhere else. So maybe that plays into the equation to some degree. But you're right, as far as the short term, it shouldn't factor much. But you can't help but wonder, even if Peter Seidler were still around and he felt like, okay, we might need to spend a little bit more responsibly, but I'd consider dipping into the CBT after resetting the penalties and all that. That would seem to be a stark improvement over where we are, where we're not getting anywhere close to that, because that might allow you to keep Dylan Cease, keep Luis Ariz, be a little bit more generous with extensions with some of these guys, and field a roster that everybody feels really good about, as opposed to being in the situation where we are now, which is not too dissimilar from where we were last year. And look how it turned out, where we had no idea who was going to be in the outfield with Fernando Tatis Jr. There were questions about the rotation. Infield needed kind of some sorting out, and didn't necessarily know we were getting in Kyle Higashioka. Michael King obviously had a great season. But that also took AJ Preller having an AJ Preller masterclass the entire year. They didn't bring back Donovan Solano. He's in Seattle now on a $3.5 million deal. Was that just a little too much for a player of his, stage in his career and his role? I don't know. David Peralta, they hit on David Peralta. Obviously, the Rise and Cease deals, every button he hit, worked out. And down to the deadline, bringing in the relievers, who are obviously a big part of what they did throughout the regular season, the postseason. Can you expect that again? I don't know. But it's just, I've thought about this a lot. the vibes were so good immediately after the season. And now a few months later, I have a lot of trepidation about like where they're at and what's going to come in the next couple months.
Yeah. How about, I mean, I've heard all this rumors now all of a sudden about trading Robert Suarez.
Yeah.
The bullpen is definitely a strength, or do you want to weaken that to try and find some, are you robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point? Like how much is AJ going to have to massage what he's got within these financial parameters versus how much can he go that little bit over? That's going to be a big deal. Like, can you say no to Jurickson Profar and then go get Austin Hayes and or maybe Randall Grichuk and David Peralta, because Grichuk destroys left-handed pitching and Peralta's really good against right-handed pitching, and you got a left field platoon. It's versus get a guy who is Jurickson Profar, who loves it here, and we love him here, and obviously he's great for the vibes. He leads the world in vibes above replacement. So I just don't know. It's one of those things that is going to have to be sorted out at some points, and hopefully some point very quickly. And maybe at some point, AJ just says, screw you guys, I'm doing what I want to do. He turns into Cartman and says, screw you guys, I'm going to get a free agent.
The Suarez thing is interesting because I've very much resisted it, but as time has gone on, I've felt myself coming around to the idea a little bit. And I've always said, like, even, when Hader was here, I always like, their track record has been with they've had a really effective track record with cheap closers, like a Brad Hand, Kirby Yates, what they did with Rosenthal in 2020, Melanson, Rogers. Now these guys, you're not talking about, Tanner Scott types. You're not talking about, like, these aren't Mo Rivera types, but these guys have been good enough in most cases and effective enough on team friendly deals. Maybe you feel like, okay, can we get somebody that we feel maybe they're not 100% of Robert Suarez, but maybe they're like 85, 90%, and we can reassess as the season goes on and we get closer to the deadline. For how many years does Suarez have on his deal? On a, fairly a reasonable number. That might be attractive.
He's got an opt-out after this year. Yeah, he's got his $8 million for the next 2 years or 3 years, but he can opt out after this year. And if he's only making $8 million, and you see what kind of pitcher contracts are being thrown around, you could pretty much guarantee he's going to opt out after this year.
Yeah. So, but if that helps you kind of sew up another spot, then you might. I don't love it, but you might need to do that.
Well, who can Jason Adam can close. He doesn't have extensive experience there, but he can close. Adrian Morejon, is he your closer? He's got closer stuff. I'm not sure he has closer mentality.
You're banking on, Jeremiah Estrada continuing to take a step, and Sean Reynolds.
Estrada was the next guy I was going to say. Jeremiah Estrada, does he close? Sean Reynolds showed he has the stuff and the mentality. Again, your ultimate small sample size. Can you fill that from within? I think you're right. I think Estrada probably have the right of first refusal on that, just by how dominant he looked at times last year. I don't know. When they gave the closer's job to Suarez after they let Hader walk, he was unproven as a closer. So maybe, and it worked out great. So maybe that's the route they go again. Yeah.
I just hate that we're having to ask these questions, but that's the situation we're in. Devin says you local guys should blow the subject up even more. Heard Roki loves the media and likes to be under the microscope endlessly. We're not putting him under the microscope. Nobody's criticizing Roki Sasaki. We're praising Roki Sasaki. We want him to be part of this franchise. He's an incredible talent.
Julius Caesar on here. We did not come to praise Roki, but to bury him. No. We came the exact opposite. We love Roki. We want him to come. In fact, we're pledging right now, the second he signs, we'll never talk about him again if he comes here. Only on days he pitches. Yeah. That's really it. We want Roki here to be, kicking and out on the beach and have a nice time and be completely unbothered by people. Even Joe Musgrove, who's the ultimate hometown hero, can walk around at Mission Beach and not be bothered by people. Like, of course, Roki Sasaki is going to get that same treatment here. We love that.
Carlos manifesting Roki will be a Padre. Trust me. I trust you, Carlos.
Yeah, we'd like Carlos. Well done.
Hi, Carlos. Lastly, Winker, 1 year, $8 million. Tucker settles at 16.5 for this coming season. Does that give us any insight on what a deal for Jurickson Profar could look like?
No, because Winker's probably going to end up playing first base because Pete Alonso's gone or going to be gone. What was the other one? Oh, Kyle Tucker. No, Kyle Tucker is a whole different ball game. Kyle Tucker is an all-star. He's one of the best left-handed bats in the game.
No, I know. I'm just
multi-time all-star, World Baseball Classic here. That guy is younger, more power. Kyle Tucker's a better hitter than Jurickson Profar is. Probably better defensively too. So if that tells us if he got 1 year, 16.5, I mean, Profar's probably in the $13 million range, which is exactly where I'm saying he should be the entire time.
What's interesting with Winker is same age as Profar, coming off, it bounced back a little bit in 2024 after some down years. Didn't put up the type of numbers that Profar did. But I was just looking at both players' reference pages. This year was the first year that Jurickson Profar had a higher OPS plus than Jesse Winker's career average. So like, what does that mean? One guy's got a little bit more consistent of a track record. One guy's coming off a sensational season and then has kind of the, in terms of the fit, the comfortability. So anyways, I thought I saw those both pop up today and thought, okay, does that give us any sort of insight? Since like we've heard nothing. We've heard nothing. He was with Fernando Tatis Jr. There's a social media post in the cage doing his thing. We have heard nothing, and so just trying to figure out what all this looks like.
Profar is the ultimate. Is it a 1 year outlier because he's in a contract year, and basically the last chance of his career kind of year? I think you look at the underlying metrics, which I know is kind of a buzzword in Major League Baseball these days, but he hit the ball harder than he's ever hit it for a full season this year. And that goes back to what he told me when I talked to him in the clubhouse in, I believe, mid-May, when he was off to that fantastic start. And he said, I've changed my approach at the plate. He said he realized it when he was in Colorado and his numbers went down. The only player ever to go to Colorado and have his numbers drop as a hitter. Not the only one, but you know what I mean. And he got to San Diego and he realized, I'm giving away at-bats. So what he did was he took the same mental approach to every single at-bat and didn't give any of them away throughout a 650, 700 plate appearance season. And that's why he was able to carry it, because he always had stretches and he kind of, back off trying to pace himself for a whole year. He did not give away a single at-bat last year. And boom, he becomes Jurickson Profar. The guy who was the number one prospect in 2013, had all the shoulder problems. He's fully healthy. The fact that he's able to put the barrel to the ball with the consistency that he did this year, I don't think that was a fluke. It wasn't the comp I saw was Cody Bellinger, had that really good year in 2023, but didn't hit the ball all that hard. A lot of that was luck and playing at Wrigley Field. Jurickson Profar hit the ball extremely hard consistently last year, better than he ever has. And when you show that you can consistently make hard contact, the numbers will be on your side by the end of the year. So I don't think this is an outlier, fluky kind of year for Pro. I think this is what he can be. Now, maybe it's not to the exact same level, top 15 in OPS, but he's top 25 in OPS in Major League Baseball among qualifiers, and that's where he can sit for the next 3 or 4 years. So while teams look at him going, was this just that 1 year thing, and are you going to regress to your mean? Or is it they look at him as going, the dude we all saw as a massive prospect figured it out, and now his career is going to take off a little later than we thought it was. That's where his value lies for most teams.
Yeah. I'm really just curious how that's going to shake out, because it's hard to pin down. But you make a really good case there. Are we going to be doing an emergency podcast later tonight?
God, I hope not.
Or tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. We don't have football night on Sunday, so we got a little more time to spare.
How about we do it on Monday? Let's have them sign on Monday so we can all forget about that other major event that's happening on Monday and not have to worry about that and being all depressed.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm in for Monday.
Practice rounds at Torrey Pines and the Farmers Insurance Open, Darnay.
I know.
I can watch those guys play and realize my golf game's in the crapper.
Fired up about that. I love Farmers Week. So yeah, I would take Monday. I think it's going to happen before then. So be prepared to get a text from me like, hey, we need to go live. Let's make it happen. But so man, how nice
Cuba Libres tonight then.
to finally talk about what's actually happening after months of this. I'm ready. So ready.
Yeah, I was wondering about alcohol intake and when it actually might happen. So
you can do one or so, it's fine. I think you can hold your own all right.
I can, but then it's like, is it with the ethical thing there? Like, I don't know.
Nobody knows. Nobody's watching this or paying any attention to this. So
I think the only time I ever did one with a scotch in my hand was when they made the playoffs in 2020.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, just have it slightly off camera.
And we weren't doing them on camera then either, so that was good.
We weren't. That's true. And I don't think I even noticed that. I didn't. Yeah. So yeah, you hit it well. So why not? And if he signs with the Padres, reason for a celebratory.
Oh, if he signs, okay, let's do this. If he signs with the Padres tonight, we're getting on doing an emergency podcast, and we will toast. We'll toast to the Padres. If he signs with the Dodgers, we're getting on tonight and doing an emergency podcast, and we're just going to break stuff. Just start throwing stuff around the room in pure anger.
I got this box from some old bobblehead. Yeah, this thing could do.
Yeah, break that. Just stomp on that. Just go throw the people's elbow on it.
All right, look forward to that one. Thank you, Derek. Thanks everybody, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you very, very soon.
Drunk or otherwise.